I was halfway through a bite of Mary's homemade soup when a bitter tang hit the back of my throat, sharp enough to make me pause mid-spoon. The kitchen smelled of garlic and thyme. Same as always, but something was off. I glanced across the table at her, stirring her own bowl like nothing was wrong. "Hey, babe, doesn't this taste kind of weird?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Her head snapped up, eyes narrowing like I'd just called her cooking trash. "Rude much?" "It's the same as always." She shot back, a little too quick, her fingers tightening around the spoon. I shrugged, figuring maybe I was imagining things. Yeah, probably just me. But the doubt stuck, a splinter in my mind. I took another sip, trying to place the taste metallic, almost. The room was warm, the hum of the fridge steady in the background, but my gut twisted anyway. Mary kept eating, her movement stiff, like she was waiting for something. I pushed the bowl away, appetite gone, and reached for my water instead. Then it hit me a wave of drowsiness. So heavy I nearly face-planted into the table. My eyelids drooped, the spoon slipping from my hand with a clatter. "Damn, I'm beat," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. Mary didn't look up, just hummed something vague. "Work getting to you again?" Her voice was flat, like she was reading a script. I tried to answer, but my tongue felt thick, words slurring into nothing. The edges of the room blurred, the yellow glow of the overhead light fading to a pinprick. I don't know how long I was out, but Mary's voice yanked me back, sharp and impatient. "Hey, get up. You need a shower before bed, you're a mess." She was standing over me, arms crossed, her shadow looming across the table. My head pounded, limbs heavy like I'd run a marathon. Yeah, I grumbled, hauling myself to my feet. The clock on the wall read 7:30, way too early to be this wiped. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, but the fog wouldn't lift. Something wasn't right. I caught my reflection in the mirror pail, hollow-eyed, like I hadn't slept in weeks. What the hell was going on? By the time I made it to bed, my brain was a mess of half-formed thoughts. I'd been brushing off stuff like this for months, chalking it up to stress. But this felt different. Mary was already under the covers, her back to me, silent as a stone. I wanted to ask her something, but my body gave out before I could. As I drifted off, that bitter taste lingered on my tongue, and a cold knot of suspicion settled in my chest. Tomorrow, I'd figure it out. Tomorrow, I'd stop pretending everything was fine. It wasn't just that one night things had been off for months. I'd eat dinner, feel fine for a bit, then crash hard like someone flipped a switch in my brain. 2, maybe 3 times a week, I'd wake up on the couch at 5 a.m. My neck stiff, mouth dry, the living room dark except for the flicker of the television I never turned off. Other nights, I'd drag myself to bed, Mary's voice fading as I stumbled down the hall, only to wake up at 10 the next morning, still feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. At first, I blamed work-long hours, late nights, the usual grind. But it kept happening, and I couldn't shake the nagging feeling something was wrong. I didn't tell Mary I was going to the doctor. She'd just roll her eyes, say I was overthinking it, like she always did when I brought up stuff like this. So I booked the appointment on the sly, took a half day from work, and drove to the clinic alone. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee, the kind of place that made your skin crawl with how quiet it was. I flipped through a dog-eared magazine, barely reading, my leg bouncing a mile a minute. When they called my name, I shuffled down the hall, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of angry bees. The doc was a middle-aged guy, graying at the temples, with a face that didn't give much away. He sat me down, adjusted his glasses, and started asking questions: sleep patterns, diet, stress levels. I rattled off the basics, feeling dumber with every word. Yeah, I pass out after dinner a lot. Like, out cold. Wake up hours later, still groggy. He scribbled something on his pad, then ordered a blood test. "Let's see what's going on," he said. His tone flat, but his eyes sharp. I nodded, figuring it was nothing, maybe low iron or some crap like that. A week later, I was back in his office. Same sterile walls, same faint coffee stink. He didn't waste time. "We found high levels of zolpidem in your system," he said, leaning forward, his voice low. I blinked at him, the word not clicking at first. "Sleeping pills?" I asked, my throat tight. He nodded, slow, like he was choosing his words carefully. "Yeah, pretty high dose too. You taking anything like that?" I shook my head fast. "No way. Never touched the stuff." His brow furrowed, and he leaned back, tapping his pen against the desk. "Then someone might have slipped it to you. Happens more than you'd think. I'd keep my distance from whoever's got access to your food or drinks." The words hit like a punch to the gut. I stared at him, my mind racing. But all I could see was Mary's facial stirring that soup, her quick snap when I questioned the taste. "No, couldn't be." "Could it?" I forced a laugh, shaky as hell. That's nuts." He didn't smile back, just slid a pamphlet across the desk, something about patient safety. "Think about it," he said, his tone firm now. "And watch yourself." The drive home was a blur. Rain spattered the windshield, the wipers squeaking with every swipe, and the suburbs rolled by in shades of grainy lawns, picket fences, all so damn normal. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking on the wheel. Mary? Drugging me? It didn't make sense. We'd been together for years, married, for Christ's sake. Sure, things weren't perfect lately, but this? My stomach churned, a mix of anger and disbelief bubbling up. I couldn't confront her, not yet. I needed proof, something solid to tell me I wasn't losing it. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the rain had stopped, but a cold dread settled in my bones. Whatever was going on, I'd figure it out. I had to. I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed proof. The doc's words kept echoing in my head, someone slipping me sleeping pills right under my nose. It sounded crazy, but after that bitter soup and those blackouts, I couldn't just let it go. Mary acted like everything was fine, humming in the kitchen while she prepped dinner, but I wasn't buying it anymore. If she was messing with me, I'd catch her in the act. So I opened my laptop, hit up Amazon, and ordered a few mini cameras small enough to hide, with live feed straight to my phone. 2-day shipping couldn't come fast enough. The package showed up on a Thursday, just before Jack was due to swing by for one of our usual hangouts. I tore it open in the garage, the air thick with the smell of motor oil and damp concrete. 3 tiny cameras, each no bigger than a quarter, with sticky mounts and a quick start guide. I skimmed the instructions, my hands jittery, and got to work. First one went in the kitchen tucked behind a dusty spice rack on the counter, angled to catch the whole space. The second I stuck in the living room, hidden in the shadow of a bookshelf, with a clear view of the couch where I'd been passing out. Last one went near the garage door, just in case she was sneaking something through there. I synced them to my phone, downloaded the app, and tested the feeds. Crystal clear. My chest tightened as I watched the empty kitchen on my screen, Mary's cutting board still out from lunch. This was real now. Friday rolled around, and Jack texted he'd be over at 7. I played it cool all day, joking with Mary over breakfast about some dumb work story, but my stomach was in knots. Every time she looked at me, I wondered if she knew I was onto her. "You okay?" she asked once, catching me staring as she chopped onions for the pizza she was making. "Yeah, just tired," I lied, forcing a grin. She shrugged, went back to slicing, the nice rhythmic chop echoing in the quiet house. I slipped away to double-check the cameras, making sure the angles were right. The app pinged with a low battery warning on the garage own damn thing. I swapped it out quick, my palms sweaty, half expecting her to walk in and catch me. By the time Jack showed up, I was a mess inside but kept it together on the outside. He clapped me on the shoulder, all grins, same old Jack with his loud laugh and stories about his kid. "Man, you look beat," he said, tossing his jacket on the couch. "Work kicking your ass again?" I chuckled, playing along. "Something like that." Mary came out with a tray of pizza and wings, her smile picture perfect, like she hadn't a care in the world. "Eat up, boys," she said, setting it down with a flourish. I grabbed a slice, nodding like everything was normal, but my eyes kept darting to the kitchen doorway. Was she gonna pull something tonight? With Jack here, we cracked open a couple of Cokes, the television blaring some football game neither of us cared about. I kept the conversation light work, the weather, Jack's new car while my mind raced a mile a minute. The cameras were rolling, and I had my phone in my pocket, ready to check the feed the second I got a chance. Every sip of my drink, every bite of pizza, I was waiting for that bitter taste, that sudden heaviness. Part of me hoped I was wrong, God. I wanted to be wrong. Mary laughed at something Jack said, her voice bright, and for a second I almost believed it. But the doubt gnawed at me, sharp as a blade. Tonight I'd know for sure. I just had to hold it together a little longer. I locked the bathroom door and pulled up the camera feed on my phone, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack. The tiny screen lit up with the kitchen view, the angle-perfect every inch of the counter in sight. Mary was there, standing by the fridge, pouring my Coke into a glass like she'd done a million times before. But then she paused, glanced toward the living room where Jack and I were supposed to be watching the game, and reached into her pocket. My breath caught as she pulled out a small plastic baggie, tapped out some white powder, and sprinkled it into the glass. She stirred it quick, her movement sharp and practiced, then set it down like nothing had happened. The room spun around me, the bathroom's tiled walls closing in. I gripped the sink, my knuckles white, staring at the screen. It was real. She was drugging me. I forced air into my lungs, trying to keep my hands from shaking as I swiped to the living room feed. Jack was sprawled on the couch, mid-laugh, oblivious, while the television blared some quarterback's fumble. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but his easy grin made my stomach twist tighter. Did he know? Was he in on it? I flipped back to the kitchen feed empty now. Mary must have headed back to us. I shoved the phone in my pocket, splashed cold water on my face, and unlocked the door. My legs felt like lead as I walked back out, every step heavier with the weight of what I just seen. "Everything okay?" Mary asked when I dropped onto the couch, her voice all honey and concern. She held out the glass of Coke, her smile picture perfect. I nodded, taking it with a hand I prayed wasn't trembling. "Yeah, just needed a sec." I set the glass on the coffee table, untouched, my throat too tight to even fake a sip. Jack grabbed another slice of pizza, oblivious as ever. "You're missing the best part. Man refs are screwing us again," he said, pointing at the screen. I forced a laugh, my eyes darting to Mary. She was watching me, her smile still there, but her gaze flickered to the glass for a split second. That's when I knew she was waiting for me to drink it. I couldn't sit there pretending anymore. I had to know how deep this went. "Give me a sec to grab some ice," I muttered, standing up and heading back toward the kitchen. Once I was out of sight, I pulled up the app again, rewinding the footage from the living room camera. My hand shook as I hit play, the timestamp showing just after I'd passed out on the couch last week. There I was, slumped over, the television still on in the background. Then Mary stepped into frame, her phone pressed to her ear, whispering something I couldn't make out. A minute later, Jack walked in not through the front door, but the garage, like he'd done it 100 times. My gut dropped as I watched her pulling him close, his hands on her hips, their whispers turning into something else right there in the corner of the room while I was out cold. Jack's voice came through, faint but clear. Doing this right in front of him, it's the best rush. I nearly dropped the phone. My vision tunneled, blood roaring in my ears. Jack was just in on Ith was the reason. They'd been doing this for God knows how long, using me like some prop in their sick game. My fist clenched so hard my nails bit into my palms, the pain sharp enough to keep me from losing it right there. I wanted to storm back in, smash that glass across the floor, and demand answers. But I couldn't, not yet. I needed more. I needed them to slip up tonight while the cameras were rolling. I'd play their game a little longer, let them think they'd won. Then I'd burn it all down. I leaned back on the couch, pretending to drift off, my head lolling to one side like I'd done 100 times before. The living room was warm. The hum of the television, a steady, dronesome announcer yelling about a missed pass while Jack chuckled beside me, oblivious. Mary was in the kitchen, her footsteps soft against the linoleum, the clink of dishes faint as she cleaned up from dinner. I kept my breathing slow, even every muscle coiled tight under the act. My phone was in my pocket, the camera app open, recording every damn second of this night. After what I'd seen on the feed, Mary slipping that powder into my Coke, her and Jack sneaking around while I was out, I knew tonight was my shot. I'd play their game, let them think they had me, then flip the script. The air shifted as Mary came back into the room, her perfume cutting through the lingering smell of pizza and wings. "He's out already," she whispered, her voice low but carrying that edge I'd missed before, like she was holding back a laugh. Jack snorted. Shifting closer to her, I could feel the couch dip under his weight. "Told you it'd work," he muttered, his tone smug, like he'd won some sick prize. My blood boiled, but I kept still, eyes cracked just enough to see their blurry shapes through my lashes. They moved to the corner of the room, near the bookshelf where I'd hidden the second camera, their whispers turning into something else, hands brushing. A stifled giggle from Mary. Every sound scraped against my nerves like sandpaper, but I didn't move. Not yet. My heart slammed against my ribs, each beat a countdown. I could feel the sweat beading on my forehead, the effort of staying still making my muscles ache. They thought I was out cold, same as always, but I'd barely touched that Coke just enough to wet my lips and make it look good. The glass sat on the coffee table, untouched since I'd set it down, the ice melting into a puddle around the base. I'd seen the footage, knew what they'd been doing behind my back, but hearing it live, Jack's low chuckle, Mary's breathy reply lit a fire in my gut I couldn't douse. I wanted to jump up, smash that glass across the floor, and demand answers right then. But I needed more. I needed them to bury themselves so deep there'd be no crawling out. Minutes stretched like hours, their voices fading into murmurs as they got bolder. The floor creaked as Jack shifted closer to her, his hand brushing against something, her arm, maybe her waist. "Right here?" Mary whispered, a nervous giggle in her voice, but she didn't pull away. "Yeah," Jack replied, his tone darker now, best parts knowing he's got no clue. That did it. My restraint snapped like a cheap rubber band. I shot up from the couch, my voice slicing through the air like a blade. "It's all recorded. I've got every damn second on camera, and I'm going to the cops right now." Mary froze mid-motion, her hand still on Jack's arm, her face draining of color faster than I'd ever seen. Jack stumbled back, crashing into the bookshelf, a stack of old DVDs clattering to the floor. "What the how?" he stammered, his eyes wide, darting between me and the doorway like he might bolt. Mary's mouth opened, then closed, her breath coming in sharp gasps. "Ken, wait," she started, but I cut her off, pulling my phone from my pocket and holding it up like a loaded gun. "Don't even try it," I snapped, my voice shaking with rage I couldn't hold back anymore. "I saw you spike my drink. Saw you two sneaking around while I was out. It's all here." I swiped open the app, pulled up the kitchen feed, and hit play. The footage rolled Mary by the counter, pouring the Coke, tapping out the powder, her quick glance toward the living room like she knew she was doing wrong. Her eyes widened as she washed herself, her hands flying to her mouth. It's not," she tried, but I didn't let her finish. I flipped to the living room footage from last week, the timestamp clear as day. There they were, tangled up in the corner while I lay slumped on the couch, Jack's voice crackling through the speaker. Doing this right in front of him, it's the best rush. Mary's knees buckled, and she grabbed the armrest to keep from falling. Jack just stood there, frozen, his face pale as death. "You sick bastard." I spat at him, my fists clenching so hard my nails bit into my palms. The pain kept me grounded, kept me from swinging at him right there. We've been friends since middle school, and this is what you do? Sneak around with my wife while I'm drugged out of my mind? Jack opened his mouth, but nothing came out, just a choked noise, like he'd swallowed his own tongue. Mary was crying now, silent tears streaking her face, but I didn't feel a damn thing for her. Not anymore. And you, I turned on her, my voice low, cold. You thought you'd play me like some chump? Feed me pills and laugh about it behind my back? Ken, please, she whispered, her voice breaking, but I shook my head. Save it. I don't want to hear your excuses. I grabbed the cameras off their mount zone from the bookshelf, another from the kitchen doorway, me hands steady now, fueled by a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Every second of this was burned into Mether Betrayal, their smug whispers, the way they'd played me for a fool. But I wasn't the fool anymore. I had proof, cold and hard, and I'd make damn sure they paid for it. I'm done, I said, shoving the cameras into my bag. Cops will sort this out. You two can explain it to them. I turned for the door, my pulse still hammering, but a weight lifted off my shoulders with every step. They'd thought they could break me, but I'd turned their game against them. Now they'd see what it felt like to lose everything. I walked out the door with the cameras in my bag and drove straight to the police station, the night air cool against my flushed skin. The station was a squat brick building downtown, its fluorescent lights harsh against the dark, casting long shadows as I stepped inside. The front desk officer barely looked up, her fingers tapping away at a keyboard, the stale smell of burnt coffee hanging in the air. I set the bag down with a thud, my voice steady despite the adrenaline still pumping through me. Got evidence of a crime, someone drugging me. Need to file a report. She raised an eyebrow, finally meeting my eyes, and called over a detective. I handed over the footage, walked them through it all, Mary spiking my drink. Jack's twisted confession, every word clipped, matter of fact. They took it seriously, scribbling notes, copying files. I left with paperwork in hand, my shoulders lighter but my chest still tight. The legal stuff moved faster than I expected. I got a lawyer the next day, a no-nonsense guy who'd seen worse than my mess. We filed charges, felony drugging, emotional distress, the works. Mary and Jack didn't fight it hard. The footage was a slam dunk. They settled in a civil suit a few months later, coughing up a decent chunk of cash, not enough to erase what they did, but enough to cover my move. State court handled the property split, clean down the middle since we didn't have kids. Mary moved back with her folks. Last I heard, Jack's wife kicked him out, and word got around his tech job, some startup gig. He voluntarily resigned before they could fire him, probably dodging worse. I used the settlement to grab a new place downtown, a small one-bedroom, high up, with a view of the city lights blinking against the night. I unpacked the last box one evening, the hum of traffic faint through the window, the space still smelling of fresh paint and cardboard. My hands paused on an old photo of me and Jack from college, beers raised, grins wide. I tossed it in the trash, the frame clinking against empty takeout containers. No point holding on to that. Mary tried calling once, left a voicemail full of tears and excuses. I deleted it without a second thought. They'd blamed each other in the end, Mary swearing it was Jack's idea, Jack claiming she'd roped him in. Didn't matter. They could rot in their own mess. I leaned against the window, the glass cool against my forehead, and let out a long breath. It wasn't over, not really. The betrayal still stung, sharp in quiet moments like this. But I'd made it through, carved out a new start. I'd be okay. One day at a time.